Hello and welcome. Excited to have everyone here. This is just really
Hello.
the crux of some of what's
Hi.
going on. And I am very excited to let you know that Mr. Jeffrey Whitford of MilliporeSigma has joined us today. Now, he is the VP of Sustainability and Social Business Innovation Life Science. Welcome, Jeffrey. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. Appreciate it.
You are welcome. One of the things I want to let you know about is that Jeffrey is the real deal here. He is not someone who just talks about it. He just won the Sustainability Hero of the Year from Business Intelligence Group. And as you listen to what he is instigating in the innovation in Millipore Sigma, you're going to get excited about what's possible in your supply chains as well. But before we start, I want to ask you a couple different questions. So we're going to be putting up a poll here quickly. First one is, where is your company on embedding sustainability? And if you enlarge it up on the top, you'll see a square where you can enlarge it. Just go ahead and put in your responses. We'll give you about 30 seconds because this is going to give us some information about where everyone's at, what they're looking to do with sustainability. Okay, I'm still getting in responses. Have a few more. Wait just a few more seconds as we have things come in. All right, I'm going to end the poll. Let me share the results with you. So it looks like right now sustainability exists, but we're not really quite sure where it's existing and how it's existing. So to me, that means we're hearing the words. We don't know what's really going on in the supply chain or in the company as a whole. Now, in some, sustainability is enabled in some areas, and so we're going to find out about that next. Let me go to our next poll. All right, let's get this going. Otherwise, I'll just have you answer it to, technology. I'm an engineer. I gotta love it, right? All right, here's the next one. Supply chains. Where in the supply chain are they currently embedding sustainability that at least you know of or think that you're hearing that they're doing something? And for those of you who don't own supply chains and are listening to perhaps your clients, go ahead and say in general where most of the practices are being handled for sustainability right now. Okay, I'll wait a few more seconds while the rest of everyone comes in. Excellent. And very interesting, actually. So I'm going to end the poll. And we have procurement and manufacturing tied right now. So there is interest in the supply chains, contract manufacturer selection. So we're looking at our network of suppliers, and then repair and remanufacturing, refurbishing. What's going on in there? How can we be more sustainable? It's already aiding that circularity, but what else can we do with it? So fabulous. So as we go to our next and last question, always getting more detailed. What is the largest constraint to embedding sustainability in your supply chains? Now, this is a short answer, and you can just give me one, two word bullet points or a couple things with a comma in between. But just curious about what it is that's stopping you from putting more sustainability in. And this could be throughout the business or in an individual area. You don't have to identify the areas. All right, I'll wait just a little longer. If you're like me, it takes me a while to type because I keep typing, hitting the wrong letter. Have to back up. We'll wait for just a few more seconds. And I'm going to close the poll now. And let's see what you have. So I will send them to you in an email just so that you can see them. But what we want to do in order to launch into what our main topic is today, how to do it, is the fact that we need to understand that sustainability, the focus of sustainability, actually creates competitive value. And that means that sustainability is not another framework. It's not another methodology. We already have those, and sustainability works inside of those. It becomes one of those things that you do day in, day out in your supply chains. And as you're doing your continuous improvement, as you do your transformation, or as you just do the daily work of supply chain, of which there's quite a bit of, that focus allows us to increase our performance, as has been proven by the fact that those who embed it see positive results on their revenue line, on the bottom profit line, as well as in reductions in cost. And then it's got a multiplier effect. We are also seeing that investors are attracted to us because we're not only planning for sustainability, we're actually executing on it. And they're willing to provide more money because we're doing that. More customers are interested in what we're doing because they agree with the values that we are now embedding in all of the work that we do each and every day, not just performance values, but now also those purpose values, the sustainability. And the icing on the cake is that we end up attracting people who want to work with our company and they stay with us because they believe in that purpose. But talking about building competitive value with a sustainability focus is a lot different than actually doing it. And that's why I'm going to welcome Jeffrey to come and talk with us. And Jeffrey, if I could, I want to take a little bit of a step back just to talk about what caused you to enter sustainability in the first place, and then what gets you excited about what's going on right now with it.
Yeah. Absolutely, Cynthia. So I kind of fell into my job quite literally. This wasn't what my plan was in terms of what I went to school for or experience that I had had, but it kind of was a right place, right time moment. I started at the company I work at now about 19 years and I'm going to go with like 10 days ago, just about, 100 feet that way, where I was proofreading catalogs for Sigma Aldrich. And I came into the organization. I've got a degree in journalism focused in advertising. So, I thought I was going to be working at an ad agency doing campaigns and cool things. And here I was sitting and flipping through a 3,000 page catalog to make sure it was correct, kind of not knowing why I was where I was. But what happened and how I got connected to sustainability was really through kind of more of the social side of this bigger concept of sustainability through community engagement. And they asked me if I would help with the community stuff. That was literally how it was put to me. And at that point in time, that was 5 things that were done here in St. Louis, which at the time was where our corporate headquarters were. So I did that, and it stuck with me as I navigated to different roles within the organization. And in 2009, they came to me and said, "Hey, we're going to form this department. Would you be a part of it?" And then very shortly after, my then boss left, and they said, "How about you just take all of this?" And I was like, I think you may have the wrong person because I don't know anything about carbon emissions. I don't know anything about engineering. I don't know anything about green chemistry. The list of things I didn't know about was significantly longer than the list of things that I did have a clue about related to the topics of sustainability, social, and governance. But at that point in time, it was a different world, right? This was still a nascent topic you could learn on the job. And that was really a really fantastic opportunity for me because that's what I did. I was a sponge. I got to work and I was looking around everything that I could find. I had started my MBA program right at the same time I started this new role. And so I was able to really pair this viewpoint that I was learning through the MBA program about thinking about this in a competitive strategic fashion. And that's really formed the basis of the approach that we've taken that's informed my work to really look at this, as you pointed out, as a competitive advantage. And I think that's really where I look and say, I think we may have been onto something a little before our time. There's still a lot more for me to learn, but I really come at this from a much different place than you may typically expect somebody to come to this type of role from.
To me, that's exciting because it means we can really involve more of the workforce in all of this work and get them engaged in meaningful ways because you have not had an insignificant effect on MilliporeSigma, quite the opposite, actually. And so I'm curious because when we talked in July at in New York at a conference on sustainability, you were talking about some really cool things that were going on in design. Yep. And so here we are with design and they're improving the product. They're making the environmental footprint lessened. They're expanding the life cycle of the product. They're doing all sorts of cool things that we in supply chain can take advantage of, like lightening the load and changing what's actually being bought. Can't we as supply chains just say, enough, we've got plenty on our plates. You guys just keep doing it in design and we're going to back up and do what we do?
Yeah. So the challenge with that, and one of the this is a conversation that we're having with a lot of people internally right now, is that that element can address a very small portion, right? Like there are changes that need to be made, but this is where the supply chain really becomes such a workhorse. Like we already know it is the case, right? Supply chains, you kind of live and die by a really high quality supply chain that's efficient, that's doing what it's meant to do. But you see this come into a much clearer light when you think about the frame. So here, about 69% of our CO2 footprint for scope 3 is with the materials that we purchase from our suppliers. So to give everyone a little more frame about the complexity that I'm talking about, we sell more than 300,000 individual products, more than, I forget how many SKUs that actually works out to be, but it's in the millions of SKUs of those 300,000 products. And we work with 30,000 suppliers. So you start to see the complexity of the web that we're building here. And then if you think about that, so for us, 69% of 2.281 million metric tons of CO2 is stuck with those purchased goods and services. So that means the materials that we are buying from those 30,000 suppliers to then make the 300,000 finished goods that we're selling to our customers. And this is where you realize that us doing design work can only handle so much. And we are really going to have to figure out ways to figure out new sources for materials, but to work with our suppliers to have them change some of the things that they're doing. So we can't just rely on the typical, that's what we've always done, that's what we're going to continue to do. But we're really going to have to think about partnership in a different way to say, how do we enable this to happen? One of the things that is so just upfront to me is I spent 1 year in procurement right before I moved into my sustainability career. And I really thought that was the end of my life. I was like, this is not what I was meant to do. But it helped me begin to understand how our business actually worked. And what I go back to when I think about what is it going to take to work with our suppliers, I think about the time that I had to buy snake venom from a man in Louisiana. Now, I spent probably, let's call it $250, $300 on that purchase, and that fulfilled the required buy for a year's supply of what we would need. That's still a contribution or a component of that 69% of the 2.281 million metric tons. But the question is then to be asked, what does that man know about his CO2 footprint or the environmental impact of his operations? And then you think about that across 30,000 suppliers, and we've got some very, large scale, sophisticated suppliers. They know what's up, fine. We have a significant portion of our suppliers, though, who the person who is responsible for sustainability is also the person who's unloading things off of the dock, who is also the person who is paying the electrical bill, who is also the person changing the light bulbs, right? And so to assume that they're going to know what to do, you realize the complexity and the challenge that sits in front of us. But once again, we can do all of those things internally, but that is not going to help us achieve the goal here because the big piece, the iceberg that is waiting for us is this 3.1 scope, and that is our suppliers. And so we have to really change how we look at the importance and the kind of centering or anchoring around supply chain that needs to happen as the preeminent spot where we're either going to win or lose when it comes to climate change.
And so, as you talk about that focus on your supply base, are there some things that you can share that you are starting to think about doing, or you've got in maybe a baby beta test, or it's actually working for you?
Yeah, so one of the things that everyone defaults to, right? This is where just people go, and it's natural tendency because it is the kind of easy to do thing that's right in front of us, is renewable electricity, right? So we're asking all of our suppliers to start making a switch to figure out how they can procure or either install renewable electricity at their facilities. So solar panels, wind deals, that may be on-site or off-site. But regardless, we want to see you switch to where you've got the credits that show that you're utilizing renewable energy. But the reality is that takes care of like 25% of the footprint. So the big portion, once again, sits in this other category, transportation, the actual products itself. And this is where it gets more challenging. So for instance, we are looking at ways that we can identify new suppliers or new sources within the supply chain and think about, okay, if we've got material that we're traditionally sourcing, like solvents, for instance, that come from fossil fuel raw materials. Well, we identified a new technology and we're working on bringing a new supplier on board that offers a bio-based version of that, which reduces the footprint at a minimum 60%. And we know we can push it higher because they have not yet transitioned to renewable energy. You see the benefits and what's going to have to happen. But then you've got things where you're not going to necessarily be able to switch to maybe a bio-based version. This was, one situation. So then how are you working with your supplier to think about the efficiency of their manufacturing operations? What are the experiences that we've had that we can share? So we're really looking at how we can basically toolkit the things that we've done to share those approaches with suppliers around packaging, around engineering, around manufacturing efficiency. For instance, we're looking at how we can re-engineer products that we sell to our customers. So for instance, we've got a product that's called beta amylase. It comes from sweet potatoes. It is an enzyme that's extracted from sweet potatoes. Now, we had two researchers who were just doing some at-home research, not related to work, on the craft wine and brewing industry. And they found a text from the 1950s about how they could strip a polyphenol more efficiently through a process. So they were like, wait a minute, I think we could actually use this at work. And they brought it into work and were able to apply this, which was changed our process, eliminating the complete use of solvents in the process. So that was 1,900 gallons of acetone no longer used. We're able to cut the sweet potato usage down to a third. So we went from 6,000 pounds of sweet potatoes to 2,000 pounds of sweet potatoes. So significantly lowering the amount of material. And then we were able to eliminate the need for increased electricity usage because we didn't need to raise the temperature or the pressure to make the reaction occur in the same fashion. There were also savings from a time perspective. So our employee workload on that product decreased. So one, you heard all of those things. If you are thinking about that, number one thing is there's financial savings. That's great. Number two, where there's typically financial savings, there's typically sustainability savings somewhere around there, right? And I think that's the reality is it doesn't have to be just one thing. If people think I'm sitting around or running around hugging trees, singing Kumbaya and skipping through a field of daisies, no, that's not what's happening here. I really have a business hat on to think about what are the ways that we can offer win-wins across the board, right? To our manufacturing organization, to the supply chain organization, to our customers, because that's really where you see this take hold and you start to implement it. But that process, this system that we use to do the re-engineering, that becomes a model that we can then share with our supplier base and say, hey, this has worked for us. We don't know if it'll work for you, But we're willing to share our scientific expertise with you, and then hopefully, if there's a savings opportunity to be had, we can share that savings with you, right? So you get a chunk of it, but we'll also see something from it too. But it really comes about coming at this from a partnership view rather than I'm going to come at it with a stick and tell you this is what you have to do, because I don't think it'll work. I don't think that is an approach that is viable. I mean, I've had that happen to me multiple times, even over the past week. Some of our customers saying this is what you will do, and I'm like, I hope you realize, you understand that I can do a certain portion of this, but you are also going to have to do that. And I think that's the realization is there's going to have to be a whole lot of change. So how do we help move people through that change? And to do that, I think you need kind of examples. You need paths that you can send people on that give them reference points where they can see how a process was changed. And I think that's really what we're looking at when we think about these types of changes within the supply chain is how do we do this in partnership and give really clear examples of the ways that we can succeed at it.
Which sounds fabulous, but what if I'm just starting out to get into sustainability? Where do I even start? I don't have anything to give my suppliers.
Yeah. So one of the first things that I you need is data. And data starts with being able to catalog things like your emissions. And that is, there are plenty of systems now that are available at low cost to be able to help you through that, starting with scope 1 and 2. And the good news is that comes from things like your energy bills. So that's a great way to get that going. Now, for these other inventory, scope 3, that can be much more complicated, right? If you're a business like ours, that inventory is pretty significant and it's wide ranging. Now, if you have fewer products in your arsenal, there are a lot of databases that you can access, like EcoInvent, Gabi, that help provide a frame of reference. If you don't know the specific emissions for what you sell or the products in your product mix, so there are global codes that are available, just like these codes exist for things like shipping or other things, same thing happens in sustainability. And so those global codes will help to then be able to create that inventory to understand what does my footprint look like. And there are certainly more and more consultancies that are coming around and popping up who are there to help with these types of things. And so, sometimes that investment is possible, sometimes it's not. And so then you have to get, it's a little more elbow grease and creativity that goes into it to be able to do that. But I think that's really one of the best starting places. And I wouldn't let data perfection get in the way of progress, though, because then it's really thinking about what are the ways that we can have or see improvements in our business that will not only benefit sustainability, but they can add to the bottom line, right? We're making fairly significant investments into our facilities through our Edison program. So this is an energy efficiency program that we have started within our company, and we're going to invest approximately 100 million euro over the next 6.5 years to decrease or to hold our energy growth flat as we build and add new facilities. But when you think about that, that scale is pretty massive. But for anyone, if you take a look at what you're spending on CapEx, is this an opportunity where you can think about and using, can I allocate a portion of that? And it can start with a very small portion. It can be 1%, 2%, 5% that you allocate to that, because what we are seeing is that the returns from a savings perspective are significant. And over the time of this program, it far outstrips the cost that we're putting in. There's significant savings to be had that will pay back to the business, right? And I use that kind of like a big bank account, right? I look at this and say, I take a debits and credits model approach. I'm debiting over here to get the money to invest in our facilities, but I'm crediting over here when we see the savings and we're able to deliver that back for the business, because that drops to the bottom line. It helps increase the margin. It helps control some of the variation that we're seeing. And I think that's the thing, is start to go after these small scale things. And especially now, certainly for those in the US, there's so many incentives through the Inflation Reduction Act that are available for people to start kind of tapping or getting into these things. And this is where, there are a variety of organizations that can help walk you through that to be able to maximize those credits, but it makes it a little bit more palatable. Some of those things may have felt kind of out of reach, but now with the tax credits, they really become cost advantageous and certainly beneficial to the business.
Standing. And just to make sure, when you do the credits and balances or credit and debits, is that something that executives uh, agree to see and agree is real and proof of what you're doing?
So I'm getting them more and more on my side with this, right? I think one of the things that we had not done the best job of was we were a little scattershot in terms of the data points because there are so many places we're working that it's hard, or we weren't looking at it holistically. And I really said, okay, this is a challenge. Let's do more of a total cost of ownership so that we see the bigger picture. And so instead of having, oh, we've got the energy efficiency program over there. Oh, we've got the virtual power purchase agreements there. Oh, we've got re-engineering over here. Oh, we've got the commercial aspects where we're adding incremental business over here. We're now bringing it to one big statement. And so the statement as a whole provides a really clear and remarkable picture. I use this as we go into our budgeting phase cycle this year with my boss. And I was like, look, I don't know what else you want me to do, but there's a significant plus over here in comparison to what I'm asking for over here. And it was kind of like one of those, I got the look like, yeah, I can't argue with you, right? But that's why I'm really appreciative of our leadership, where they are open to that. They're seeing that and saying, um, they're all in, right? They have committed that we are working towards industry leadership. And I think that's another thing, just in thinking about this. Very rarely is it that new categories get created to where you can have ownership of a category. When you think about this, I go back to my schooling, and one of the things one of my professors said that has just stuck with me is that you can have one person who owns something in a customer's mind pretty consistently across an industry. So an organization can own quality, an organization can own innovation, but you are not likely to have two people in the same industry own that, right? There's going to be a person who comes out on top. And I think with sustainability, this is basically a new category. And so if we think about this, and what our company has really said is that, okay, that is something that we can own, right? There's a crack in the market of a new opportunity that has become critical to a lot of people, and people are starting to make buying decisions. And so if we can own that, that's gonna change this overall equation, and that's where these financial figures, right, come in to help illustrate the point even more clearly. So I think that's where I'm seeing more uptake with our senior leaders and their kind of acknowledgement of the breadth and depth of the work and the delivery that we've been just really, I think, thoughtful and persistent on getting the data and being able to report it out. Because once again, that's another strategic weapon in my arsenal.
And so what I heard you say was that you use the data to support the work that you're done to prove to management that you just differentiated the business and created that strategic value.
Absolutely. And it gets maybe a little more complicated, right? We've got a lot of other things that we look at as we benchmark against competitors to be able to see. And, there's a ton of ratings and rankings organizations, and I take all of those with a grain of salt, because if you're good at responding to things, I was never a good test taker, but if you're good at figuring out how you need to respond to things, you can do really well on some of these rankings, but they're not necessarily a reflection of your success from a sustainability standpoint. And that's where we're really looking to say, how are we having a high level of rigor to look at the contributions, what we're delivering, and then what does that mean in terms of how this is being framed with our customers and their acknowledgement of what we're able to do. One of the important things that we've done this year was we were able to match up all of our scope 1 and 2 footprints to all 300,000 of our products coming out of each facility, to be able then to provide that to our customers in this dashboard that visualizes for them the progress that's being made. And the feedback there is remarkable, right? But this is all connecting all of these things in the background, and it gets more powerful when all of these supply chain things come in. One of the things, I don't have it right at hand, but I am unfortunately just kind of addicted to Starbucks. Now, in the UK, if you order ahead or if you order in the store, the sticker that they put on the cups in the UK, it includes a barcode, a QR code, and you can scan that to get the allergen and health facts about them. Now, I like to think that I try to be moderately healthy, though if you looked at my Starbucks order, you would be like, that is not anywhere near healthy, but I don't get whipped cream because I'm healthy, right? And so I thought, man, I'm going to be able to scan this and then I'm going to be able to see the customized recipe and the calories related to that because I wanted to know. Well, I did it, and what did I get? I just got the standard recipe as is, and I was like, "Well, this is disappointing." But it was a light bulb moment for me, and this is where you start to see all of the things related to the supply chain come together. We have 2D barcodes on all 300,000 products that we offer. So it becomes a mechanism to be able to engage with our customers in a totally unparalleled fashion, and that's the words we use is unparalleled transparency. So the ability for us in the future to be able to take a phone, snap that QR code, it takes you to a product, a digital product passport that gets you the scope 1, 2, and 3 footprint of the product, but it also gets you other characteristics, looking at things like does it contain conflict minerals? Does it come from a supplier that has confirmed no forced labor or compliance with the UK Modern Slavery Act? What about diversity, equity, inclusion at that supplier? Does it come from a small business or a minority-owned business? What about biodiversity? So you can see how we can create something really remarkable using all of these supply chain components that once again gets you in a differentiated place that is far and away ahead of where anyone is at today. And that's really the vision that we're bringing to life and connecting all of these disparate dots, but through the supply chain. It is without question the key to making this all happen. And then it's engaging all of these different parts of our supply chain, our internal folks, helping them understand the power that sits within their roles and what they do and what they make possible, and hopefully simplifying it, right? Because I can't come to them with this, uber complex scenario. I need to be really clear about what we're asking for and what we're looking for from a delivery standpoint. But hopefully making it as simple as possible and providing some benefit to them as well.
I have so many more questions, but I know I can't ask them right now. Perhaps sometime in the future you can come back and we can find out more about what's going on and give you some insight into perhaps what's going on in supply chain in general, so you can see how it's comparing with what companies like you who are already advanced or more advanced are actually doing and expecting out of all of us. But for now, thank you so much for sharing all of that. It's fantastic.
Excellent.
Gives us a really good understanding of why in the world we in supply chain have to start doing this along with on-time deliveries and make sure that everything's in full. We get it. Thank you, and thank everyone else for joining us today. I will look forward to. Uh, I'll look at your questions as we go through. And then we'll figure out what to do from there as far as out answers or perhaps have other webinars. Thank you so much, and I'll see everyone later.
Thank you.